Hello. In today's video I would like to start with some technical considerations regarding the design and setup of my Darling amp, but those initial explanations will only serve to lead over to some more fundamental and general questions about high-end HIFI and how those systems should sound like. So what I've been playing around when tuning a little bit my Darling amp was to look at the operation points for the driver tube. In this case it's an 8532, and you can see already on screen the general characteristics of the tubes as measured according to the spec sheet. And what I've put into the diagram is in red the load line, which corresponds to 50K. So I've got a 50K load resistor and it's operating at 116 volts plate voltage, which is the blue vertical line that you can see here. I try to highlight a little bit with my cursor the lines which I'm trying to explain. So here we've got the plate voltage, and this is the load line corresponding to 50K. And at the operation point I measured something like 3.8 milliamps, which I try to also put into the graph, so those two lines then intersect at this operation point. For those who are interested into some further explanations about load lines and diagrams and so on, I'm sure you'll find plenty of explanation somewhere else, but this is not really the topic of this video. I would really come to something different. So this is how the amp started and also how I started listening. So when I just really did all these measurements and I just really noted the status right at the start, I compared this also to the spec sheet, and the spec sheet of the tube I've got open on a different window, and this is what you can hopefully also see and read here. And what it specifies as general characteristics of this valve according to the manufacturer is also here. You can see in here the plate current which is recommended, and there's a minimum of 9 milliamps compared to the 3.8 which I've measured, and a maximum of 18 milliamps that would be suitable for this tube. And you could see also already on the diagram that we are operating at the lowest of all limits of all of the characteristics which have been recorded. So I switch back to the diagram and you can see we are just really at the bare minimum where the tube already starts to have a little bit of life in it. And of course you would need to look at the maximum plate dissipation here, which is not really noted in the graph, but we are still far away from whatever would be the load limit of this tube. So as this was quite a bit off, and I even measured that my grid voltage was even higher to achieve this point than the minus 1.5. I measured minus 1 in my case, so the conductance of the tube was a lot lower than what was initially specified. Nevertheless, not the point here. This is what I measured, and you can see already that in respect to getting any input signals going this way, you need quite a lot more of voltage change than going into the minus range for a certain change in current through the tube. And you can just really see this by the distance that you've got between the different constant grid voltage lines, which are also all noted here. So what I thought is, we are operating at the limit of the recommended window and actually even below it. Let's move it a little bit higher to move into a better range regarding the complete characteristics of the tube. So I experimented with the load current, and I also operated with the cathode resistor, just really to adjust the working point. And here's just another example of what I arrived at. So I reduced the load resistor from 50K only to half of it, like 25K. And I adapted the cathode resistor also to finally arrive at 9 volt, which was the minimum of the recommendations according to the spec sheet. So in this case then, here we have got the load line, which now is a little bit steeper because it corresponds to the 25 kilo ohm, so it's twice as steep as the 50K. And it's moved with this intersection to its new plate voltage, which in this case was 168 volts. So here we again have got the 9 milliampere 168 intersection point, which is the operating range of the operating point of the tube in the current case, or in the later case, which I looked at. And I even went lower and tried different other ones, but let's take those two only for as an example. And what you can see here already is that in terms of linearity, which means like the current change that you're getting for a certain voltage gain, is a little bit more linear. And you could take it even further, and I hope with the software it allows me to also just really change the points, because you can still see that there's a lot of change in the steepness of the constant grid voltage lines and also their distance to each other, which means the change that you're getting for, in this case, half a volt of grid voltage change. So here you're getting only very, very little change, whereas here you're getting a lot of change for half a volt. But the further you go up to higher currents, the more you can see that those lines get parallel and also equidistant from each other, which means you're getting much, much more of a linear response from the tube. And if I could maybe now, with the magic of software, hopefully I can, maybe I can't. I don't know if it doesn't really allow me to change the points anymore, but nevertheless, maybe I can just really draw a virtual new line, which is a lot lower load resistance, which then maybe also exceeds the operating range of the tube, but just really taking this one as an example and giving it a shiny color. So you can choose within the diagram a certain point or operation point where you think you're getting the best linearity out of the tube. So it might be that somewhere here in this range it looks like you've got pretty even distances between the half volt differences in cathode voltage, and let's say you arrive at operation point which is then, let's say, maybe 170 volts and 12-13 milliampere and so on, and you've got a much steeper load characteristic, which means like your load resistance will be a lot lower, and this should lead to better results. So in the end I tried all of this, but my conclusions were it actually sounded better and best with the 50K load resistor. So with the initial starting point, and in fact I also really went back to just really this load situation for the driver tube. And this is now something which leads over to the more fundamental question which I would like to come to. And this is that it needs to be very, very clear for everyone that we have to decide and to divide between two different topics when talking about HIFI and high-end system. One is you follow the way of best and most true to nature signal reproduction, which means you come to an ideal which is the wire with gain, which is noted and talked about so often. But the other option would be also to question if this is what really sounds best. And in this example here, I'm absolutely sure that the measurements of something which is going towards this direction here in the second diagram would be better than and superior in terms of signal reproduction, but still in terms of sound I just really prefer this one. And I think this is the fundamental point where you could really extend answering this question in many different ways. And in the end, it comes down to the preference of a listener. What is often done in HIFI magazines, because there are some hard fact data that you can also easily prove and easy measurements and so on, is that you note all of the normal technical data like what power does an amplifier have got, how much distortion does it have, what is the frequency response or the step change or step response, and all of these different kinds of things which are easy to measure, but in the end they are not really guarantee that if they are all let's say the best signal reproduction giving you the best sound experience. And in particular with tube amplifiers, they are often loved because of their harmonic distortion spectrum that they offer. And this is where things then very quickly get complicated, because in the end you cannot really measure what is a good or what's the bad sound completely regardless of the preference of the listener even. So there's no criteria which tells you this is something that sounds good or this is something that sounds bad. And on top of that, of course, everyone has got its own preferences. And I was just really, or my nose was just really stuck onto this one very drastically when I picked up one of the used CD players, which I'm now undertaking some modifications as well. And he was very proud to present me his stereo system and how great it was and how fantastic and what he has all done. And that he even added 2 sets of subwoofers to get even more bass out of it and so on. And he was really explaining more in detail what he's tried and all of the different options that he went to and so on. And when listening to it, my ears started bleeding. So this is just really one thing, that nobody can tell you what is the best system for you. And especially also if you go to shops or if you listen to videos on YouTube and some recommendations and so on, a lot of it of course is just really sales and people that would like to make money by selling something to you. But then sometimes also the difference between different components are just very subtle, and very clever salesmen try to already bias you in your listening by giving you some explanations about certain components which are completely subjective, and they are suggesting that listen to this CD player, to this transport, and it will be so much more transparent, and the highs would be so much better, and the bass would go deeper and deeper, so that you already arrive at listening to those components having this information from your salesman, which means like you're not listening to it anymore, like you are completely free and without any influence. So my only tip in this regard is stay true to yourself and just choose what you hear is best for you. So don't choose anything because somebody that you respect and somebody that you think has got a good overview about HIFI and you rate his opinion very high. But if you don't hear the difference, or if you hear something that you don't like, don't buy, don't switch. There's no point doing it. But I think it's all too easy to push some people into this direction, just really because, especially in front of somebody who seems to have a very high reputation and is very high regarded, is almost like losing your face if you don't agree to what he's saying. And I think this is what's a very, very bad practice to sell things because of your ability to move people's opinion into buying something particular. The other thing, of course, which is another aspect of high-end, is that it's a question I asked myself already for a long, long time, because after experiencing and also hearing some of those Dolby systems and some sound enhancements and so on. Because quite a lot of times people, when listening to music, are listening also to, is the soundstage wide, is it deep, is it very contoured, is it very precise, can you locate instruments very, very nicely, and all those things you can enhance now also on very shitty systems with digital processors, because how this all works acoustically is known and can be influenced with digital sound processors. So what I'm wondering is, and maybe it's already happening anyway, that you're in an, in a totally uninfluenced, to a totally uninfluenced and uninformed listener if you play to him two different systems. One, which is a really, really good high-end system according to let's say the common understanding of high-end, and a very cheap crappy system which has got these wide option and deep sound and deep space sounding, so all of these artificial sound processors. Which system would he pick? Would most of the people pick the system with the biggest sound enhancements? Or would they pick a system which is, according to most people's understanding, a true high-end system? So one which does not have any artificial sound alterations included into the signal path. And this is more going towards, I would say, an ethic and philosophic questioning and answering, where and what is the right way for you. Personally, I don't think that any kind of artificial sound enhancements will reach the level of a good audio system, at least to what I like on a good audio system, because artificial will always sound artificial. But I cannot deny that sometimes it might also sound better than something which is the classic high-end system. But it depends really if a good high-end system is not really in some ways doing the same like the digital processors do, which means you stack up components which then all by themselves contribute a little bit to altering the sound the way you like, into the right direction or into a certain direction, so that in the end, from start to finish, you also have got quite a lot of sound alterations, but you are not doing it by digital sound processors, mainly by analog or other devices which have got some side effects, let's call it, some kind of distortion elements in some way, which then come to something similar to what a digital sound processor would do on a very cheap, crappy system. So, nevertheless, this is a question that everyone has to answer themselves. But we've seen also in HIFI already that what is dominating the market is or are the systems which are cheap, which can be sold for a high margin, and with which 95% or so of the population will be happy. And there's no money to be made with the 5% which would like to choose a different route rather than the mass market. And I think this can be seen with the introduction of CDs longer time ago, then leading to dying records, and now the resurrection of records again. Already earlier it happened with tape, which now also has got its return since already a long time, with all tape recorders increasing in prices dramatically. And one of the other things that comes to mind is also the MP3 format or MP4, all of these bit streaming formats, which now also reach higher bit rates and higher acoustic sampling rates. But at the beginning it was also all very basic and very simple. And it took over the market. It's all over the internet, just really because 95% or more of the people are happy with it. So there's only the very small number of people which divert from this mainstream, and for those life will be pretty expensive unless you're building all of your components yourself, or at least you have got great knowledge in selecting what you like and what you choose, which still I think is the best and most satisfying way, and the only way I think you can be satisfied and happy over a long time without being super rich. And even if you're super rich and you build your house around your speakers and your amplifier, you just really, instead of swapping out a component, you swap out an audio room or a house built for audio or whatever. It's just bigger components that will be swapped, but that might not make you happier. And if you design and do all of the things yourself, you choose yourself the direction. And normally this requires also greater knowledge about how things shape sound. So you also have got an easier handle on what to do to get the results that you're looking for. And this is my highest recommendation anyway. Just make yourself familiar with technology, how things work, and try things yourself and be hands-on for as much as you can. And to me, this is the only way how you can really be happy and enjoy HIFI for a long time, and have fun with it and keep it still reasonably affordable. So that was a little bit of a different kind of video, but I think it's still a very important aspect to just really differ between signal reproduction, which leads to HIFI, which is a norm, at least here in Germany. So there's a clear specification what is allowed to call itself HIFI, and diverting from this was high end, because it was already found long time ago that there are systems out there which don't correspond to the HIFI norm but still sound very good, or maybe even better. And then there's all of this digital sound processing and room correction and hell knows what you can do nowadays. I'm not really up to date with all of the possibilities. But yeah, choose your route and improve your knowledge. This is my advice. So, hope you all learned a little bit from it, or at least benefit a little bit from this. These were my thoughts for this week.